Welcome to another episode of What to Say and How to Say It. Today, we're talking about how what you're not saying could be blowing up your marriage. And honestly, that's a thing for literally any relationship. And it could be something as small as, hey, horseback riding isn't really my favorite sport, Mom, which my then 20-year-old son told me. And I was like, oh, well, why do you come? And he said, well, just to hang out with you, but we don't have to drive all the way out here because, I mean, if you want to come, okay, but I don't really need to do this. I'm good with coffee. And I mean, I was reading between the lines a little bit. That's about as direct as that particular man gets. So we stopped doing the horse thing, but I was so glad I listened. I'm with our favorite licensed professional counselor today, Kyle Hargrove, and we're going to be digging into this topic about how what you're not saying could be blowing up your relationship. So, Kyle, why does the truth matter?
Truth.
That's not a
That's
small
a hot
question.
that's a hot topic in our country right now. What is the truth? What
Yeah.
is, because there is so much that that we base how we feel about others. We base a lot of that right now on what we believe their truth to be and what we believe our truth to be, and uh, it just gets so divisive. But I think the the scary part, or the sad part about what we're kind of joking about, is that when that begins happening in significant relationships such as marriages, which is about as significant as it gets, uh, that's a real problem. And there are, as we've kind of been kind of kicking this around a little bit, there are so many dynamics and we'll say fears about being honest and being truthful, that are in play, that there may be a lot more going on in the undercurrents and the underbelly of relationships than we're even aware of.
Mhm.
And those do have a tendency to kind of rear their ugly heads and and bite.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate way of looking at it. You can pretend something for so long, and then you're just at some point watering seeds of bitterness and resentment that's going to come out sideways. Because when you lie, you betray yourself, even if you don't know that you're lying at that time. And I think that not saying something can be a lie.
No
We're
way.
yeah, way.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
That
Yahweh.
is probably the most practiced form of lying, is the lie of omission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how would we ever know? Because it's not being said. So it's kind of hard to quantify that or to give it statistical value.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the things you can't give statistical value to things that aren't said, because we just don't know.
We don't know
But
how to measure it, but I do know I've done it, and it is
oh
a
yeah,
betrayal of self for sure. And then it doesn't help the relationship long term.
right.
Your partner knows, like you're flashing micro expressions while you're going, no, I'm fine. Yeah. Contempt just tweaks across your face from micro session second, and your spouse is like, no, you're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dig into this topic today, how what you're not saying is ruining your relationship. Why do people not tell the truth? Why do they not speak up in the first place, you think?
Well, probably not probably. I'm certain
Hmm.
that the either inability or the unwillingness to speak up comes from fear. And the most dominating emotion of them all on the negative side.
Hmm.
And the more we talk and study and watch how fear impacts other people, the more deeply we see it has its tentacles rooted in so many different parts of relationships and dynamics of communication. And what fear is going to do in the area of communication is it's going to cause it not to happen, or it's going to cause it to happen, in ways that are manipulative or not, they're not pure. They're not upright.
Yeah.
And so it's impossible, I suppose, to live a life void of fear. But I think being aware of it is a huge step toward fixing that problem, or at least making it much less of an issue.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes we don't even know that's what's going on, and we just don't do it and move on to something else and numb ourselves with our phone or, just distract and then move past, and it happens again. Those things cause problems, though, long term, and it's uncomfortable, really risky to take action in that space when you're not used to doing it.
Yep, that's one of my favorite words in the whole world. Risky.
Yeah.
Risk. It was a great game I used to play, or it's still a game, I presume. Risk, where you take over the world with your armies. But it took too long, so this ADHD thing kind of got in the way.
Okay.
But risk implies vulnerability, and we bring that word up so many times in so many of our conversations.
Mhm.
And vulnerability is probably one of, if not the most unnatural thing a human being is asked to provide. And the more intimate the relationship, the more vulnerability required and asked of.
Mhm.
So when we start talking about speaking our minds, and I'm not just talking about griping or nagging, speaking our minds, but speaking our minds about things of real relevance and real concern, and the hesitancy or even refusal to do so, it speaks very specifically to how vulnerable we're willing to be with that person that is our person.
Mhm.
And the less vulnerable we're willing to be, I can already assure you, the less beneficial or valuable the communication between those two people is going to be. Or perhaps uh, the more messed up it's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And you get different levels of maturity involved with each other in a marriage. That's often the outcome. It's mismatched. And everybody has areas where we're not healed, where we're unwilling or unable to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's so common for our weak area to tip over our spouse's weak area. And then you have conflict.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
talk about risk a lot in therapy. Um, it feels risky. It feels uncomfortable. It's awkward. I'm afraid. And that usually implies that there's a risk involved. And so I use the example of, with my clients, when is it okay to take a risk? When is a risk, something that you say, I'm willing to do and I'm willing to go? And so we go to the one of the easiest topics I'm aware of to understand when it comes to risk, and that's gambling.
Mm.
Okay, you say you're in the casino and you say, when do I take a risk? When do I, jump out there and let it ride?
Hmm.
Okay. And the answer is simple. It's not so simple when your emotions become involved with it and the possibility of making the big bucks. But the answer to that is simple. I risk something that I can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
Okay. If the consequence of that risk is more than I can bear, I do not take that risk.
Amen.
Okay.
So true.
Except in these primary relationships.
Okay, so hold on a second. Because you can take risks and they can be unwise there too. So tell me what you're thinking about, because I may be looking at this differently or misunderstanding you.
Yeah. Well, let's differentiate between unwise and unwanted.
Okay.
There are risks, certainly within primary relationships that would be unwise based on any number of things that we couldn't even begin to list right now. But I think where I'm looking in this is it feels so risky because the result of me being honest with my thoughts may be something very unwanted.
Yep.
by me. So it causes me to think more about not being honest, about not coming forth with the
Hmm.
maybe a great fear that I have, or a doubt that I have, or
Okay.
something that I'm picking up on, because uh, if I'm wrong, it could cause another problem.
Right.
And if I'm right and it's true, we don't even want to think about the outcomes.
Okay. So,
So that's where I say, when we're talking about risk, can I afford the loss? Can I live with the loss
mm.
if I take the risk and it blows up in my face? And a
So
lot of the
are you,
times we're going to say to ourselves in this inner conversation, no, I'd rather live in a in an artificially simulated universe
Mhm.
and relationship that at least is tolerable, rather than speak my mind, say what's on my mind, and run the risk of some type of a blow up that would take it all away.
Mhm. So let's say you're in a situation where when you take a risk, it's, and it could be the smallest of things. Like, hey, can you put your cup in the dishwasher? Like, you know, communicating something that small. And
Don't
the other,
even don't even mention the toothpaste.
exactly, or
Don't
the
even go
toilet
there.
seat, or, the fact that you haven't had a job for 3 years, or, whatever it is, let's make something small. And, and that, let's say in a relationship, that's a risk because, well, you never pick up after yourself. That's what you get. Right. And
Hmm.
I'm not saying that's me in a situation right now, or is it something that my clients are frequently dealing with, although they have,
Hmm.
right? And I've raised teenagers. So they take everything personally at some stage of the game. And to your point, when you're raising teenagers, you go there anyway and you don't take any of that personally. But that makes it not a risk for you to do it. It's like, this is my job, this is who I am, and I'm responsible for trying to grow you into a space. And so I'm going to speak the truth here.
Yeah.
And please put your dish in the dishwasher. And you can act like that if you want to, but you still need to put your dish in the dishwasher, right? But when you do that with, say, a spouse who's emotionally immature, and this may not be the best example, but let's say you get that reaction, okay, and you get it consistently, and you keep doing it. Is it wise or unwise to actually try to have a deeper conversation with somebody who can't handle that? You know, like, to bring something of yourself that actually matters, where you're seeking connection from somebody that clearly doesn't have a capacity for that. Like, I'm trying to discern how that
Yeah.
fits with what you're talking about.
Well, what you're discerning, I think, is that it's time for a third party. It's time for, if that's the case, if you cannot, if there is something that is burning within you regarding your own relationship that you feel like you can't, it's just taboo. You can't talk about it. You can't say it out loud, to the person that with whom your relationship is most significant. Because I think we've determined that, sometimes you don't realize how bad something is until you say it out loud to someone.
Hmm.
And then once you've said that, it's like it's cathartic, sometimes in ways that are very helpful and sometimes in ways that are even more fearful.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So what you're looking at here is, if you can't talk about the most intimate and the most significant thoughts in your mind with your significant other, it's time for help.
Hmm.
Now that it may be that thought stays here for months and months as we work our way toward the point where that can be shared. But there there are things that you would presume we can do when we're married, and that is, how many, you can tell me anything. You can tell me anything, while the other person's saying, "Oh, I don't think so."
Yeah. You can't
Yeah.
handle the smallest of things.
You can't handle the truth. That's right.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's something we presume should be there, should be on the table,
Hmm.
but I think probably more often than not, it's not. It's, there are things that we say, I just don't think I could ever say that to my spouse, if it's something about them. Let me give you an example where if I were to go to my spouse and say, you know what, I've been really bothered by the last year, and in that year, the person that I met and came to love and appreciate and was vivacious and laughed and had a good time. And for the last year, I have not seen that, and I have seen misery and stress and all the things. And the response that you get is not what you're hoping for. When we say, what's the risk worth? What if the response I get is, well, it's because of you?
Yeah,
I might just
fair.
keep that to myself.
Yeah,
Okay. So I mean, and this is all overthinking. Okay. This is all
yeah,
taking our concern and then blowing it up with overthinking. Once we get too thinky about things, then we begin to awfulize all the possibilities. And the next thing you know, you've got just the worst case scenarios going off like fireworks in your brain. All right. And who wants to light that fuse? I know I don't.
mhm,
But vulnerability requires an element of courage
yeah,
that we frequently don't speak about.
mhm,
And the willingness to say it's a hard place. I am willing to walk into this hard place. It would be nice to have some skills
yeah,
to
yeah,
to do it well. But I think what you're getting at is one of the three things I would have probably listed, in terms of why people are not willing to take those risks. And the first one is they want to keep the peace or be a people pleaser.
yeah,
And they
fair.
realize that sometimes there are some things that they need to say or want to say that are going to make things less than peaceful, at least for a minute. And that reminds me of our social situation as it is right now, because I think people are so accustomed to others being indirect and phony
Yeah,
that clear and direct communication appears aggressive to them. And so
mhm,
um, I think that what you're talking about, it falls right in line with some of the things that I would probably bring up if someone was talking about, why won't we take risks? Why is it so hard for me to take a risk? And I think the first one is we're people pleasers and we want to keep the peace. I think another one, and this is where you were coming in a while ago, past experiences are, I have brought up things like this before and it did not go well. And I don't know if
yeah,
there's been any work done to keep that from happening again or not, but there's
mhm,
really a high risk that if I bring this up, things are going to get dicey. And then another one is that sometimes our own self identity is in doubt enough that we're pretty much convinced that nobody else is going to see our perception as being of any value or having any viability to it because we don't think it does.
yeah, yeah. To your point, you have to gauge the relationship and continue to do conflict and choose those hard things,
Mhm.
because the other person may be doing some work. It's one of the reasons I like working with couples, and I know exactly what the other person's working on because then you have this opportunity. And I tell people, yeah, I know you've done that in the past and it didn't go so well, but try again. Like every 2, 3 months, try again
Mhm.
because they are working on themselves. Do all the stuff you need to set it up. Hey, is this a good time? I want to talk about something hard. Are you open to digging into something difficult like now or later? So you warn them. I think one of the worst things that we do is we bring up something hard, spur of the moment, because we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Gottman's research around this is that 91% of the time it's a terrible time. So you got to really set it up to have an opportunity for it to go well, so that we can continue to fight for that, create that intimacy that everybody's longing for.
Yep. And I think that's, that type of connection is the thing that we desire as much, if not more than anything. And if we feel like what we're going to say is going to break the connection or disrupt it in any way, that then we're going to be the person that's doing the wrong thing
Mhm.
rather than telling the truth, which is doing the right thing,
Mhm.
you know. But I would have to say that, if I had one thing to offer as an encouragement to people that are listening to this podcast or watching it, when it comes to having conversations like this, okay, let's say I'm willing. I've been afraid long enough. I realize something has to be done. I need to say what I've got to say, and I'm willing to take the risk to do it. I
Mhm.
have a little bit more work to do prior to that, because what I really need to do, and this is so hard because this is not human, even. It doesn't just go against who we are. It is not human. Got to take the emotion out of it when I do it,
Mhm.
especially if it's something that I'm already upset about, or I feel like, might be something that I'm going to become angry or whatever. But if we come across when we're taking that risk as, a raving lunatic because our emotions are not in control, it's not going to go well.
No.
Okay. The other person is going to look at us like, really? And this is how you bring this to the table?
Yeah, is that
you
the
know?
best you got?
Eh,
Like, really?
yeah, I
Yeah.
think there are more pressing issues, but
Mhm.
there is the ability within us, if we're aware of the need for it, to compartmentalize that emotion and say, I will deal with the emotion in a minute. Right now, I need to communicate something very important. And if I can't do it with rationale and logic and control, it's not going to go well. So, yeah, I mean, these are kind of advanced level skills. Let's not be uh, flippant about them or say,
Yeah.
hey, just go do this, but, like anything else, a good relationship or a good set of communicators requires practice,
Mhm.
education, knowledge, and the willingness to do it, do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're called to this as Christians.
Yeah.
We're called to pursue love. And when we don't do that, or when we get selfish, like, that's on us. And so we're not honoring the Lord, and we're not representing Christ to the world effectively or accurately at
Hmm.
all. We're following the enemy or our flesh. So, yeah, that's good stuff. Well, so we're walking away today understanding that relationships are risky. The truth is risky, but it's worse if you don't actually do the work, tell the truth. So, and you know how to find Kyle. It's up in the explanation on the podcast today. But if you want to get in touch with him, you can reach out. And Kyle, what's your email so that people can find you?
It is my name, Kyle Hargrove, LPC at gmail.com.
Yeah. So if you're in the state of Texas and you need a therapist, he's your dude. And if you're not in the state of Texas, pop over to greaterimpact.org. We get free resources for you. We'll help you out. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for popping by. Be sure to listen to the next episode and hit that subscribe button so more goodies about conflict and saving your marriage come your way. Have a great day.